We kind of finally...
we could talk about the big fight coming up this Saturday.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that. Yeah, we really only got one major fight to worry about this weekend, and it's Manny Pacquiao versus Yordenis Ugas. And we had already talked about this fight kind of at length last week when the fight was announced, and just out of sheer necessity due to the fact because just shortly before we started recording, it was announced that Errol Spence Jr. had a torn retina and he couldn't fight. And then Fabian Maidana also had an eye injury, and he was supposed to fight Yordenis Ugas on that pay-per-view card. So obviously, instead of just dismantling the card, you figured, okay, might as well put the two welterweights together and make that your new main event. So now the pay-per-view card looks like this. Carlos Castro versus Oscar Escandon, which is the fight that got added as a result of the changes. Victor Ortiz versus Robert Guerrero. Mark Maxio versus Julio Cejas. And lastly, Manny Pacquiao versus Yordenis Ugas. Now, there is going to be a Fox prelim, albeit this one is a little bit differently set up than the usual setup that we have for previous Fox pay-per-view prelims. And the reason for that is that they will do prelims at, I believe, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. While the pay-per-view card starts at 9 p.m., but they're not going to show the entire undercard. It's going to be Frank Martin, who we've already mentioned at length, is a very, very good prospect and is on the verge of being, one of the top young rising contenders in the 135 division.
I highly recommend the listeners out there, you including you, Mr. Nipper, to watch Frank Martin, because I said it here a few months ago on the podcast. He's a future star. The man has it all. And beautiful boxer.
Frank Martin's up against... He's going up against Ryan... I don't know how to pronounce his name, so you finally I got stumped on one. Ryan Kilszewski from Poland, who's 30-5 as a pro, has faced a couple of decent names throughout his career. He's coming off a loss to Gabe Flores Jr., who's another very talented fighter at 130 pounds. And also on that Fox prelim, Jose Valenzuela versus Esteban Sanchez, and then Steven Torres versus Justin Rolfe. A lot of prospects on the Fox prelims, nothing too noteworthy outside from Frank Martin. So let's get down to predictions. Let's kind of go from bottom to the top of the pay-per-view card. So Carlos Castro, unbeaten, really good prospect who hasn't really been super active in the last couple of years, or at least since the pandemic. Has only fought once against Cesar Juarez. Now he's going up against Oscar Escandon, former world title challenger. He's fought a number of names from Moises Flores to Gary Russell Jr. to King Tug to Brandon Figueroa. Kind of went 0 for 4 out of all those names that I just mentioned, but I believe that this is going to be Carlos Castro's coming out party. I don't believe that he'll knock out Oscar Escandon, although he could very well could. It doesn't exactly have the greatest chin in the world, but Castro doesn't have dynamite knockout power. But I think we're going to see a complete boxing performance from Castro, and I think he wins.
A one-sided beating for Castro. Escandon goes to 0-5 against named fighters. Escandon is shop worn. He's done. He's a punching bag for Castro. I mean, Castro would have to carry Escandon for him to go the distance. I know Castro's a slick boxer. He's going to land at will. Escandon, late stoppage for Castro, in my opinion.
Mark Maxio versus Julio Cejas. Maxio, another unbeaten featherweight prospect, looking really good since the pandemic, 0-2 since COVID kind of changed boxing right now. one of the top young featherweights right now in the world against Julio Cejas, who has faced a number of names, also on the losing side of a lot of those names. Lost to Guerrero, lost to Frankie Manzanilla, fought Brandon Figueroa to a split draw, albeit Cejas came in overweight for that fight. Got, been in close fights against the likes of Jamie McDonnell. Has beaten guys like Hugo Ruiz. So a little bit more of a live dog, arguably, but I think this is another, like Castro, I think I see Mark Marcio beating Julio Cejas. I think this one will end inside the distance. I think Marcio has a lot of good power, a lot of underrated power in a division that doesn't necessarily feature a ton of knockout artists, a lot of one-shot fighters, but I think Marcio stops Julio Cejas late in the fight. What about you?
I agree with you 100%. Cejas, like Escandon, is shop one. He's just an opponent right now. Mark wins easily and by late stoppage.
This one, funny enough, is the hardest fight to kind of make a prediction. Victor Ortiz versus Robert Guerrero. Ortiz has not fought since 2018. Guerrero is on a 3-fight win streak. Not necessarily against great names. The most notable name was against Heavenson Herrera in 2019, and it's by the time he steps into the ring against Ortiz, it's going to be almost 24 months to the day of his last fight. And boy, I don't know what to make of this fight. I mean, it's going to be a garbage fight. I think it'll be fun at some points. I'm going to say Robert Guerrero. Guerrero is technically fresher, technically on a winning streak. And I just don't see anything out of Victor Ortiz nowadays. I just don't. I don't even know why and how he's fighting nowadays. But Victor Ortiz, long has been the days where he got unceremoniously knocked out by Floyd Mayweather. Lost to Marcos Maidana a couple of years prior. Got knocked out by Andre Berto in what was a tremendous fight, but still lost. I don't know what's left. I don't know what is left for either of those guys, but I have slightly more confidence in picking Robert Guerrero. I don't know about you, Robert, but I'm picking Guerrero to win a close, garbagey, but fun garbage type of decision.
I'm hoping somebody comes down with COVID so this fight's canceled. On to the next. I don't give a damn about that fight. That's the perfect fight for you guys that need to get last-minute snacks and drinks and food for the main event. All right? No need to watch that monstrosity.
No offense to Ortiz and Robert Guerrero, but I will deem this the bathroom break fight. And if it goes the distance, that's almost an hour to work with. This is scheduled for 10.
This fight's going 10 rounds because neither guy has anything left. So you guys, you can go on a bathroom break. The whole 9. So let's get on to the real fight. The real fight of the card. The only fight of the card.
Hey, if you need a break, hey, maybe SummerSlam will still be on and you can watch that instead of Ortiz versus Guerrero. Maybe you can watch that. Manny Pacquiao versus Yordenis Ugas, WBA Welterweight Super Championship. Finally, the argument of who is the rightful WBA welterweight champion. This is almost like a pro wrestling storyline. Who's the real champion here? No one gives the crap about the WBA, but this is for a welterweight title. Pacquiao has looked tremendous since the loss to Jeff Horn a few years back. Dominated Lucas Matisse, boxed circles around Adrian Broner, and looked really good against Keith Thurman. But that was 2 years ago, and Pacquiao has done about as good a job as fighting Father Time as any fighter in recent memory has done. But Ugas is a slick and skillful boxer. His power is actually underrated in my opinion. Don't be confused. Don't be fooled by the 12 knockouts and 26 wins. His power is, I think, underrated. He hits harder. Maybe not enough that will knock people out, but you will feel his punches. Sean Porter, we definitely felt those punches. He should have been dropped late into their fight. It should have been called a knockdown late into their fight. He was able to bounce back with great performances against Omar Figueroa, a stoppage win against Mike Dallas, and then a close win against Abel Ramos, but I thought Ugas won that one. This is a really good fight, and I think this is a much different fight for Manny Pacquiao than he would have had he gone up against Errol Spence. I think this will be more of a chess match. There may be moments where both guys will trade in the center of the ring, but unless it's Ugas initiating the offense, I'm going to say Pacquiao will look to, circle to his left and try to kind of make Ugas chase just a little bit and just try to outbox Ugas while waiting for an opportunity to land that left hand. I do think that there is an argument for either guy to win this fight. But right now, my gut is telling me Pacquiao wins a split decision. I think this will be very close. It's hard to really get an accurate prediction because both of these guys have had essentially 10 days to prepare for each other, but that's the way the world works right now. Injuries, COVID, changing fights left and right. If this was a complete training camp, maybe my prediction would be a little bit different, but right now I'm saying Manny Pacquiao wins a split decision against Yordenis Ugas.
Everything you said, I echo. I see a chess match. I see Ugas fighting better than any of the casual fans ever thought he could because they really don't know who he is. There'll be times where Ugas will look completely brilliant, like, wow, what am I looking at? Because people will realize that this guy is a very good to great fighter. Pacquiao by controversial split decision.
Controversial.
Yes, because I think Ugas, like he did against Porter, will have earned a victory, but the guy with the bigger name wins. And as you've seen in the PBC circles, the bigger name, the one that they're backing the most, gets the decision.
More often than not, yes. I mean, you can sort of say that for a lot of different fights, for a lot of places, really nowadays, but in a sense, Ugas is playing with house money. I don't think he would have ever expected to. Actually, no. And not that I think. I know he never would have expected a fight against Manny Pacquiao, especially so quickly like this. I think he's playing with house money. I actually would not question it if maybe late in the fight, Ugas learning a bit from the Sean Porter fight where I felt like he didn't do quite enough or as much as he could have to try and secure that fight. I think that we might see a riskier version of Ugas where he might let his hands go a little bit more late into the fight. But overall, Ugas is not Errol Spence, and I mean that stylistically. Spence is more offensive oriented with who is a dynamic and tremendous body puncher who has the capability of outboxing and jabbing his opponents to a long decision, but Ugas is a slick fighter with a great amateur pedigree, but he doesn't have Spence's power. And I think
he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He does have underrated power, like you said, but he doesn't have one-punch knockout power like Errol Spence does.
No. And it is not even a case where, well, maybe if Ugas can just clip Pacquiao, because, Pacquiao is not the first time he would have been, knocked out or anything. He's been sent to the canvas plenty of times throughout his career, but he's done a better job nowadays at making sure he doesn't put himself in a position where he gets knocked out in the same way as, he got knocked out by Juan Manuel Marquez almost 10 years ago. It's almost like a smarter version of Manny defensively that we have seen in these last few fights.
Win or lose, does Manny retire?
No.
Okay. That being said, we both think Manny's going to win. I want to see. I don't think Errol Spence will be ready for Manny physically with the eye injury.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, let's make Manny Pacquiao versus Boots Ennis. Let's do this.
Ooh.
Let's do this.
I like it.
Let's do this. It would be the perfect stepping stone for Jaron Ennis, who I feel is the next all-time great in historically the most rich, latent division in boxing history. Let's do Jaron Boots Ennis versus Manny Pacquiao sometime next March or April on pay-per-view.
Could you imagine if that really did happen and Ennis beats Manny Pacquiao? Do you have any idea how good? Like, I'm just thinking like a pro wrestling storyline. Do you have any idea how good that storyline is between Ennis and Spence? Like, who is the PBC's golden child at welterweight?
There you go, and it's natural because if Spence comes back, you have a huge blockbuster. He's coming back from this career-threatening eye injury. He almost died in a car wreck. He's what PBC looked as the guy who was going to replace Floyd as their golden boy, and now we have the new golden boy. I mean, you couldn't book it better.
Oof. Man, you're getting me really excited just thinking about this hypothetical matchup that I would give like close to zero chance of happening.
It would be the easiest fight they could make. Manny beats Ugas, and then he fights Ennis next. There's no need for Manny to fight anybody. If he can't fight Spence, he's not fighting Crawford. Make it Boots.
Yeah, so I'd be down for that. I would be so down for that, but
yeah,
knowing what I know, I doubt that it's happening.
Let's put it out in the universe. Maybe we get lucky. Every once in a while, what was that? Somebody, a rabbit finds an acorn, whatever the fuck that expression is.
What? I've never heard of that.
A squirrel finds an acorn, some shit. I don't know.
I want to know what the original saying was.
Some jibber jabber my father used to say when I was a kid. Every once in a while, a squirrel finds a acorn or some shit like that.
Well, I mean, I would hope so. That squirrel finds an acorn. Otherwise, I'd be in real trouble. I would hope so.